Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition. We are presented and hosted by Highlands. Stop your cramp, not your race, and by Polar. Chase your destiny with us. One of our favorite runners who will be running the Boston Marathon, and this will be his first of 12 marathons in 12 months. Mr. John Young, how you doing, John?
I'm great, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Still being the Hammer?
All day long.
So talk about where that came from. Be the Hammer.
The Hammer. It was after I finished the 2014 marathon. Sorry, didn't finish. I had to pull out at mile 10. And was really upset. This was after the 2013 marathon 5 years ago, where my wife and son were actually at the finish line.
Before the bombings.
And so I wanted to kind of replace those bad memories with something good. And unfortunately, I got sick at mile 10 and had to pull out of the marathon. So I took the meat wagon bus back to the finish line and got out and met my family. And I was really upset. And I was crying and apologizing to them for not doing what I thought I was going to be able to do. And my son, who at that time was 11, just looked at me and said, "Dad, sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nail. Today, you're the nail." And I immediately just thought to myself, let's switch that and be the hammer. And that's kind of, it grew out of that.
So did that lead to saying, I'm going to go do an Ironman?
Eventually it did. I think the Ironman had already kind of been, kind of percolating in what I'd been doing leading up to the marathons, because I'd been doing successfully a number of 70.3s.
Yeah.
And I wanted to become a better runner, because I knew if I was going to do a full Ironman, I needed to, in my mind, I needed to do a marathon. And so, it was cultivating, and then that's what led up to 2016 with Maryland.
Now, as a youngster, was athletics part of your life?
Very little. I was a swimmer, and that was about it. When I was very young, doctors actually were telling me and other people with dwarfism that we shouldn't run. They were saying it wasn't good for our backs, wasn't good for our legs.
Right.
The constant pounding they felt would actually be damaging and not good. And so for a long time I listened to them.
You never want to listen to doctors. I've learned that over the years.
In this case, I think it was a wise decision to basically see what my body could do. And I found when I started, when I did my first triathlon in 2009 at the age of 43, it hurt, but it wasn't a sore back and sore legs from dwarfism. It was sore from moving.
Right, like everybody else.
Because I'd never done it before.
Yes.
And I just found the more I ran and the more I raced, the better it felt. And now I can run a marathon in a little under 6 hours, and I experience no back pain at all.
And you know what's interesting? I find that our sports, doctors have learned over time that our sports do change people for the better. We've seen it early days of Ironman, a guy with diabetes, Bill Carlson, and he basically traveled with a pharmacy kit, right, to do the Ironman. And then when that happened, it was like, oh wait, diabetics can be athletes. Guys with pancreatic cancer, guys with AIDS, and all different, people with all different challenges.
ALS.
Exactly. John Blazeman. And what we learn from that is that sport is cathartic. Sport can change our lives. How has sport changed your life?
Well, I think it's just changed my perspective on a lot of things. But I think the main thing for me, and it's a personal thing, and it's the satisfaction I get when I get a message from a parent of a child with dwarfism who basically reaches out to me and says, my child's PE teacher was telling me that he couldn't take part in the sport because they were worried that they might get hurt. And then I showed them a picture of you doing an Ironman and said, well, if this 50-year-old guy can do an Ironman and he has the same type of dwarfism as my son, why can't my son play floor hockey? And that is, I think that's what
it's all about.
That's what it is. Because when I was that young, I didn't have role models with dwarfism that were out doing physical things. And I'm glad it's happening, and it's just changed. I'm healthier now. I was 195 pounds before I started all of this, and my wife was the one who encouraged me to get to the doctor, and so I truly believe she saved my life. And now I'm a healthier, happier. I changed my perspective on a lot of things. A marathon takes me 6 hours, and so if I looked at that entire race, I don't think I would do it. But what I've done now is I break up every race into small pieces, small manageable pieces, and I find I tackle each one of those, and I can get through the race. And then that's changed my life, because now I do that at work.
That's actually when I first did Ironman in 1980, and you could look at it as 140.6 miles, or you can look at it and go, gosh, I'm a quarter of the way to turnaround. I'm halfway to turnaround. I'm halfway down the race. Everything becomes a positive.
Absolutely.
So when you did make the decision, I want to become the first person with dwarfism to do an Ironman. What were the challenges, equipment-wise, physically?
Well, the bike was a big thing. I was using a child's mountain bike that had been adapted. It was very heavy. And so 7 Cycles, a company right here in Watertown, Mass, customized a bike for me. And so I have a titanium and carbon fiber bike that's a lot lighter, a lot faster. That was the big thing for me, was having a machine that was built for me. And it's not necessarily faster, but it's certainly easier on my body, and so I have less resistance, so I have more energy left for the run, and I'm not lugging around this big heavy thing with me, and that's really helped a lot. Swimming, Blue 70 made me a customized wetsuit, because previously I was using a two-piece. Well, it was a two-piecer, like with kayak shorts and a sleeveless top. And so now I've got a beautiful wetsuit that fits me perfectly and helps a lot.
So now the goal, and starting here on Monday, 12 marathons in 12 months, starting and finishing with Boston.
Yep.
Right? And what led to that, and what are the challenges you see here?
Well, I think what led to it was I raced Ironman Maryland in 2016, raced it again in 2017, and I got to mile 16 of the run in 2017, and I called it quits.
Yeah.
Something in my head said, you're done. And it wasn't a matter of, I felt I had nothing to prove, and I just wanted to stop. And so I pulled out of the race. And so I thought for a day or two, am I just going to now recharge and do another Ironman and kind of, again, spend a whole year preparing?
For one race. Yeah.
Or do I want to change my perspective? And then I thought of a really good friend of mine, Becca Peasy, who now has done the 777 challenge twice. 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. So I thought, well, what could I do that's like that?
Without spending $40,000.
Exactly. and I just thought, why not a marathon a month? And I don't know, I just got the idea on my own. And because I live right here in Boston and I've ran the Boston Marathon a number of times, I thought I could start in April. And then next year, the race is 1 day to the day, brings it in within 1 year. And then that was it. And so the challenge for me is I'm a full-time high school teacher. So
you're a teacher.
I am.
Because Highlands, for their team this year, it's all teachers.
Oh, excellent.
All these folks are teachers.
Excellent. So part of my challenge was trying to find races where I wasn't going to lose time teaching. And I've managed to find every race that I'm going to do, I hope. I'm going to be able to get back to school Monday or Tuesday morning if it's a long weekend and be ready in front of my kids to teach. When I did New York in November, I did the New York Marathon, flew out of New York City on Sunday night. The next day I was in school teaching 4 classes.
So when you're doing the athletic events, do you use that with your kids? Your kids you're teaching in terms of setting goals, in terms of don't let anybody tell you can't achieve something?
That's the big thing. Like I do have people say to me, I could never do a marathon. And my response to them always is because you don't want to.
Right.
Period.
Yes.
There really is nothing stopping anyone from doing anything. And so I talk to my kids about that. And, and I say, well, if you want to take this honors course and you're in the regular track, maybe you've got to do something to kind of help yourself get into that.
Right.
It's not just going to happen. And so you've got to put some work in, practice, see a tutor, get some help, and then maybe you'll be ready to do that. I mentioned before about a marathon being 6 hours long. Students got a big paper to write.
Yeah.
Don't save it until the last weekend and do it all on that weekend. Do a little bit of it at a time. And I know with teenagers that's hard. I procrastinate.
All of us, yeah.
I procrastinate. But a couple of them said to me, like, I did that. I had to do this paper. And I said, reward yourself. Do a little bit of it and then stop and do something you like and then come back to it. And then before you know it, all those pieces hey, I'm done my paper.
So when you look at this course, how many times have you run Boston?
This will be my 5th finish.
5th. There you go.
Yep.
What is it about this course that you like?
Well, I practice here every Saturday. I'm out here doing a piece of the course, so I love it. I love the fact that it's in all the towns from Hopkinton all the way into Boston. It's hometown for me now. I live here. So some of my students come out and they pick different spots along the course, and I can hear them yelling. And this story of Be the Hammer, it's gotten around.
Yeah, it's gotten around. Yes,
runners pass me on the course and they say Be the Hammer, and I see kids that I don't even know with signs. Like last year when I ran, I counted it, and I saw 6 or 7 signs of kids I didn't even know Be the Hammer, and so that to me it's special and it means a lot.
Ironman. When you completed that thing, because obviously a lot of training goes into that. What were the challenges on race day, and how special was it to finish that thing?
Well, the challenges on race day were weather. When we did it in 2016, there'd been a hurricane, and right before the start, I'm literally in my wetsuit, and they announced that the swim is canceled. And so that's it. That's it. Go to the bike. And so had to mentally prepare, get ready. I did the bike. It was a very windy day, but I finished feeling good. Did the run. Rained a number of times during the run, and in fact, at one point, the run course actually flooded when the tide came in, and I was running through water that was higher than my knees.
Oh my God.
And I was just laughing at that point. It was so funny.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do anything about it. And it's taught me something, that I can't control the weather. And so on Monday, they're talking about rain and wind, and I'm like, so what? Like, I'm ready.
Bring it on.
Prepare and don't worry. And there's a lot of energy that's wasted worrying, and I've learned to I think that's another benefit of what I've been doing, is I've learned to adapt and realize that there's things in my life I can control, and I do that, and I try to forget about stuff I can't control.
Best running experience ever?
I think my best running experience ever would have been qualifying for Boston in New York in 2014. It was a really windy race day. People were talking about, this is going to be a terrible day, I'm not going to do well. And I qualified for the first time for Boston running a 5:57, 35 minutes faster than my previous fastest marathon. And it was a really special day.
What led to that? Did you change your training?
A lot of things. I think it was more of an emotional push. My mom had passed away 4 months earlier.
Yeah.
And I really, I had some quotes from her written on my feet. And every time I kind of drooped down and my head sank, I'd read those, and it just lifted me up. And I realized, your body position's really important running. So instead of kind of looking down and realizing I was hurting or whatever, I looked up, I smiled, and it kept me going.
This is also a pretty cool era in terms of getting support. You're with Achilles. I think you've gotten grants from Challenge Athletes Foundation. Talk a little bit about the support you get from these outside groups.
Well, I think it's Achilles International is an amazing group. We've got some super coaches in New York City. We've got a great chapter leader here in Boston, Laura Busso. She's amazing. And I think what it's made me realize is, even though I'm one of the only little people involved in Achilles International, I run with visually impaired athletes with traumatic brain injuries. There's the Achilles Freedom Team, those amazing soldiers that have sacrificed so much to help this country and have come back injured and have now found something in their lives worthwhile to do. I'm privileged and honored to race with them. And same with Challenge Athletes Foundation, the work that they do in helping the New York City Triathlon, which I've done and I plan on doing this summer, even though I'm doing all these marathons. I don't want to break that streak. It'll be 8 years in a row for me in New York. And I just love being with all these other amazing athletes.
I love it. Hey, John, as always, best of luck on Monday. Have yourself a great one.
Thanks, you too.
John Young has been our guest. Again, Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition, presented, hosted by Highlands. Stop your cramp, not your race. And by Polar, chase your destiny. And as always, be the hammer. We'll be right back.